Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for December 10th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag and to the republic and one nation with liberty and justice for all.
So please note this meeting is being televised. We are live, and it will also be available on demand on Easton Cable TV. So our first item of the night tonight is swearing in of a new firefighter. Chief Partridge.
Good evening. Thank you once again to the board for allowing the department to introduce our newest member and swearing him in to the department. I know my guys are like just pulling in the parking lot, so a few more will be joining us. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Joe Polito. Recruit Polito currently resides in the town of Abington. He comes to us from employment with Brewster Ambulance as a paramedic. He's been a paramedic since July of this year and has been an EMT since 2012. He has worked for several ambulance companies prior to going to Brewster Ambulance. Recruit Polito also has his associate's degree in fire science from Massasoit Community College. There's firefighting in his family. He has a twin brother who is a firefighter in the town of Franklin, and unfortunately was on his way, but there was an accident on 495, so his GPS said 6:15. But and his entire family is in the back row. They've joined us, his girlfriend, his mom, and some other relatives with him as well. So we thank them for joining us and being here tonight. And he's going to become part of our fire department family, as I'm sure you know, with your other son being on Franklin. It's a family atmosphere. He's going to work with a group of 9 other individuals on his group. 24 hours at a time, sleeping, eating, and being together all the time. And he'll be part of our second family. So we welcome him and you. So at this time, I'd like to ask Town Clerk Daniel Sicard to administer his oath.
I state your full name.
I, Joseph Polito,
Do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as a firefighter
as a firefighter
for the town of Easton,
for the town of Easton,
and to do so
and to do so
in accordance with the bylaws
in accordance with the bylaws
of the town of Easton
of the town of Easton
and the laws
and the laws
of the Commonwealth of
of
Massachusetts.
the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Once again, congratulations.
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 So next, since that we have the chief tonight, we figured we would maximize having him in our presence. We were going to ask him to talk a little bit about some winter preparedness tips.
All right, I brought a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. First of all, I'd like to let people know about the opportunity to sign up for Code Red, and it's an alert service that we utilize through the Plymouth County Sheriff. They provide this telephone calling service to both Bristol County and Plymouth County, so it can either alert your cell phone or your house phone. We have used this in the past during some declared emergencies where we needed to notify people of different things. So we are going to post the information up on the town's website. It'll also be on the fire department website, how you can go in and register and sign up. And it's been a while since we've done this, so don't assume that we have your correct number. If you did sign up, please go in, take a look, and you can actually go in as a new person and sign up. You can put multiple numbers in, so if you have different family members, you can sign them up for that as well. So it's a good service that we have available to us, and it can alert you of any emergencies going on.
It was really helpful last year when we opened the shelter for people. That's how a lot of people found out. that the warming shelter was open.
So just a quick summary of, talk a little bit about some of the fires in Massachusetts in 2017, particularly structure fires. There were 59 civilian deaths and 2 firefighter deaths that occurred as a result of structure fires. There were about 17,000 structure fires in Massachusetts alone, and again, caused those deaths. Primarily, the ones that died did not have working smoke detectors in the building, so it's very important that we remind people to make sure your smoke detectors work and your carbon monoxide detectors. You should test them every month, change the batteries every time you change your clocks, change your batteries in your smoke detectors, and replace them every 10 years. You can buy the new ones that have a sealed 10-year battery, and you don't have to worry about it after that. Statistically, out of the deaths, 57% were men, 34% were women, 9% were children, 41% were over the age 65. So we do have, a higher rate of seniors die in residential fires. We do have several members of our SAFE program, our team that teaches kids to be fire safe. We also have 2 that go out and do senior safety as well. So we go to the Council on Aging, to the housing authorities to try to get the message out there about how to be safe in your own home, because it's not a place where we should be dying. It should be a safe place. Fire deaths remain the same, so there were 56 in 2016 as there was in 2017, and that's up from previous years, so there's a little trend going on. 86% of the civilian fire deaths, again, as I said, died in their own home. 2017, smoking fires were the leading cause of residential fire deaths. And electrical fires were 21%, and then heating fires were 13%. But the leading cause overall of all fires, not just fires that had a death, is cooking. So we're gonna start doing some cooking lessons for everybody in the town now. So 72% of all residential fires were the result of cooking. So we need to be a little more aware of what's going on when we're cooking. We're entering the holiday season where a lot of that happens. Thanksgiving is the #1 day for fires in the home. Fortunately, we did not have any here in Easton, which is good. So just be a little more aware of when you're cooking, you need to pay attention. Don't leave things cooking on top of the stove, particularly if they're grease or oil kind of things that you're cooking. You have to pay attention. Have a cover by the pan, so if it does catch on fire, you can cover it, or some baking soda will also help to put out a fire. For fires in your oven, shut your oven off and call the fire department, 911, for a response to help you out. Also, when, particularly with seniors, make sure you're not wearing loose clothing when you're cooking over the top of the stove, because that could catch on fire. And if you have little kids, make sure you're keeping the handles of your pans turned in so we don't have any scald and burn injuries from that. Again, smoke alarms. Please make sure that you have a smoke alarm in your home, because it's down. Some fires, it's down to less than a minute that you need to be on your way out of your house and making your way out the door before you could be killed in your own home. If you don't have a smoke alarm, Ohio, I can't remember the town in Ohio, just had 5 children killed. It was either last night or this morning that they died. And I'm going to assume, I don't know the facts yet, but most likely because by the time the fire department arrived, nobody was out except the mother jumped out the 2nd story, that they probably did not have a working smoke alarm. That's the way you're going to know about a fire in your home, by having a working smoke alarm. Again, test them monthly and replace the batteries once a year. Never disable them for any reason, because the results could be deadly. Heating safety, if you should be checking, have somebody check your heating system, whether it's oil, gas. Bring in somebody once a year to make sure it's functioning properly and working properly. Tune it up as necessary. If you have a chimney, same thing. Check your fireplace in the chimney once a year by a professional who are trained to do that and can make sure that it's ready and safe to go. Always keep a 3-foot circle of safety, fireplace, wood stove, any portable heaters. Don't put anything within 3 feet of it because it could start and catch on fire. People with fireplaces, and it might sound pretty academic, but don't put ashes in anything but a metal container and put it away from your home. Don't leave it on the porch, even if it's in a metal container, don't leave it on the porch. Put it away from your home, out in the yard somewhere. And don't assume that they're out a day later, because sometimes the ash in the middle may not be out. And we have had incidents in town here where they related to ashes not being properly disposed of. Space heaters, again, I mentioned, avoid using a space heater if you don't have to. If you have to use them, just make sure you keep that 3 foot of safety. You cannot use any kerosene type space heaters in the home. They will produce carbon monoxide. They're illegal in Mass. Don't overload extension cords if you have electric space heaters. Make sure you use proper extension cord. If you have the ones with the circuit breakers on them, utilize those. Gas furnaces, again, make sure you're having it checked once a year. And if you ever smell gas from any of your appliances, heating system or the stove, call the fire department right away, get out of the house, and we'll make notification to the gas company to come and assist. Smoke alarms, Christmas or holiday safety. A lot of people use candles around the holidays. Please make sure you're using candles that are within a contained holder. Don't put them anywhere where they could possibly get tipped over. If we have pets, cats, believe it or not, have started fires from knocking candles over, or put them near anything where loose curtains or things along that line, because they could start a fire. Christmas tree safety, if you have a real Christmas tree, you got to make sure that you're checking it regularly, watering it if it needs it. Keep it away from any heat source because it will dry it out. And if you've never seen a Christmas tree go up in flames, go on, Google it, and see how quickly a Christmas tree will burst into flames, and it could very quickly overcome, your house and trap some people inside. Christmas lights, make sure you're putting approved lights on there. You'll see a little tag right on them, usually UL approved. If there's any fraying at all, do not use them. Don't overload Christmas lights, again, as well. Don't use too many extension cords. And if you're leaving the house, you should shut your lights off on your displays, whatever you may have. And of course, blow your candles out. Make sure, be very vigilant about that, because some people forget. We have had candle fires in Easton. And as always, keep matches, lighters away from children, out of reach of children. Don't assume. Make sure you're putting them in a safe place that a small child cannot get at. If people smoke, as I mentioned, the leading cause of fatal fires was smoking. If you have people that smoke and come in your home, please make sure you have a place for them to go and dispose of their cigarettes. Don't assume putting it out in the mulch is going to do it, because we get a lot of mulch fires and building fires result from that as well. And that's it. Any questions about that I can answer?
And we're going to have some of those tips on the website?
Yes, we're putting out some holiday safety and winter safety tips for everybody. And I gave everybody a little flashlight there, so just another thing that everybody should keep a flashlight nearby their bed in case you need to get out of your house, power's not on, you'll have that. It's good to take on vacation, keep with you in a hotel, particularly you're in an unfamiliar atmosphere, and if there's no power and no lights, it comes in handy. And we have a bunch of these that we're going to be giving out to the seniors in the community as well. So.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
These are great
Thank you.
reminders.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
you. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So next up, we're going to talk about retirement plaques. A few years ago, we established that employees who retire with more than 15 years of service would receive a retirement plaque from the town administrator and board of selectmen. So we have 3 presentations tonight. Nobody is here to accept the plaque, so we just want to mention it, and we'll show you what the plaque looks like. The first one that we had from the town clerk's office, Teresa Wooding, the assistant town clerk, was with the town for 20 years. You probably remember her sitting right when you walked in the front door. The Council on Aging, Elaine Sears, she was a driver for the COA for 29 years. They had a little retirement party for her earlier this year and gave her her plaque then. And for the fire department, John Beltramini, he was 31 years, and James Walsh, fire captain, was also 31 years. James was going to try to be here tonight, but he wasn't able to, but just so the people know, this is what the plaque looks like. So we thank them all for their service and dedication to the town.
Absolutely.
Okay, next we have State Auditor Suzanne Bump. She's going to come and join us if you want to sit up there, and Craig will introduce you.
I'm delighted to be able to introduce to my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen and to the town of Easton, State Auditor Suzanne Bump. Suzanne is a graduate of Cardinal Spellman High School, got her bachelor's degree at Boston College, and her law degree from Suffolk Law. And from 1985 to 1993, she was a state rep in the 5th Norfolk District. And after leaving in 1993, she spent a number of years in private business until 2007, when then Governor Patrick invited her to be Secretary of Labor. And from 2007 to 2009, or thereabouts, she was Secretary of Labor. And in 2010, she took the big leap into statewide office and was elected as the state auditor. And starting in January, it'll be her 3rd term. And not only that, a year ago, Suzanne moved to Easton, so I'm delighted to have her in Easton as well. So Suzanne Bump.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very wonderful to be here. As Selectman Barger has indicated, I've now been in town for 13 months and a few days, and I'm really thrilled to be able to be here. I wanted immediately to come in to introduce myself to you, but since last year was an election year, I thought that I ought to just stay away from that. But now that that's behind me, I did want to just introduce myself to you. I don't have a lot of interaction with municipalities, and to the extent that I do, it's usually to offer them some form of relief from what state government is imposing upon them. If the office of the auditor were to be created today, it probably would not actually be called the office of the state auditor, because the position as it has evolved over the years is more like that of the chief accountability officer for the Commonwealth, because we don't actually audit the finances of the Commonwealth. We don't prepare the annual financial reports of the Commonwealth. Instead, we do what's called performance auditing. The idea is to ensure that state agencies and companies that are doing business with the Commonwealth are following the rules as to how they account for money, whether it's being spent or being collected, and to ensure that contracts are being put out for bid, we're only paying for services rendered, and the like, and to also, increasingly, because we have the capability of doing so, determine how effectively that money is being spent. So that's in the nature of performance auditing. What are we getting for the taxpayers? What are the taxpayers getting for the dollars they are contributing to the Commonwealth? As has been indicated, I have been doing this job for the past 8 years. It's the audit work that gets most of the attention, but that really only comprises half the staff of the auditor's office. We also have a unit that is dedicated to investigating public assistance fraud, whether that comes in the form of so-called welfare benefits, or it might be Medicaid benefits through the Mass Health Program, even daycare benefits, that wide range of activities. We are the investigative arm for those agencies that are dispensing that money. And so when there's reason to think that someone perhaps was not really eligible when they were initially allowed into a program, or perhaps now has a source of income that they're not disclosing, it's the Bureau of Special Investigations in my office that conducts those inquiries, and then works with the agency, turning that over to them to resolve it. Fairly often, those cases result in criminal prosecutions, and in that we typically work with local district attorney's offices, although there are some times when we will prosecute a case ourselves. The part of the office that local officials most dearly appreciate is the division of local mandates. I'm sure that that on more than one occasion you have been tempted to curse the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for some new requirement that it has imposed upon you, and that frequently, because the follow-up question is, and where are we supposed to get the money to pay for this? So it is the auditor's responsibility, has been since about 1980, to make determinations at the request of municipalities, and sometimes we will accept a request from a citizen or an official who's not an elected official in a community, to undertake a legal examination as to whether, in fact, a new mandate upon municipalities that's been handed down by the legislature or a state agency is one that indeed the Commonwealth should be paying for. You can look at it in a matter-of-fact way and say, well, an unfunded mandate is an unfunded mandate, but it's not. It does have to meet a legal definition. It does have to have been a pretty recent vintage. It needs to have, be imposing more than an administrative cost, an ordinary administrative cost. Thank you very much. I'm still dealing with a cold here. And it needs to meet another couple of other requirements in order for us to determine that, yes, in this instance, the Commonwealth should have provided the funding to do that. A very recent example of that, and one for thank you, and one which I was just talking to your town clerk about before the start of the meeting, concerns early voting across the Commonwealth. 2 years ago, the legislature enacted early voting for statewide elections. Once this starts, it's hard to stop it.
Yeah, especially on TV. That's when you always get it.
So sorry. And there were aspects of the law that we determined indeed the state needed to fund, and as a result of that determination, we worked with city and town clerks 2 years ago and are now collecting information again this year, so that from cities and towns, so that we can determine how much of a reimbursement for those costs must the state appropriate and the Secretary of State provide. 2 years ago, the amounts for many communities, including Easton, were rather de minimis. In total, it amounted to more than $1 million across the state. But we suspect that it will be more this time as municipal clerks and voters as well have learned about the process and are taking greater advantage of it. And city and town clerks are finding ways to accommodate ever larger groups of folks. So we're in the process now of collecting that information so that we can make that certification and the money can become available. So that is a very brief overview of the main activities of the Office of the State Auditor. With regard particularly to local mandates, though, the work that we do is really important, even at the local level, to have the auditor as an agent for accountability, because we really are holding the legislature accountable for the decisions that it makes and the consequences that redound to communities as a result of that. So even very well-intentioned ideas can have adverse consequences on municipal budgets, and so we're here to help in that regard.
Terrific.
I'd be happy to take any questions that you may pose about the work. But again, I'm very pleased to be here. My interactions as a citizen of this town to date have been most positive.
Excellent.
That's always good to hear.
Right.
One of the things that I know about you is that you are the first woman elected official to this position, so I think that's great, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And also, you had mentioned before that not every state has elected, some have appointed, so
Yes.
that's interesting to me.
When the position was first created, there'd always been someone in state government fulfilling this role in one way or another, but it wasn't put into the Constitution until the middle of the 19th century. In fact, it was on the ballot and accepted by the voters in 1848. And at the time of the office's inception, it was an appointment jointly by the House and the Senate. The idea being that the auditor, while a member of the executive branch, does not report to the governor. The auditor has to be independent of not just the governor, in fact, but all other executive offices and the other branches of government. Shortly thereafter, for reasons that I don't actually know, it got changed to an elected position. But the idea is still that it is accountability and independence from the rest of the branches of government.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Chuck?
Yes, Ms. Bump, first of all, Wikipedia was very kind to you when I read about you
Oh, really?
this week.
Well, that's good to know. I'd never think to read it about myself.
And thank you for clarifying what I perceived from looking at that. It seemed like, in the sense of a financial auditor, it was, I was curious as to some of the areas you got into. I was pleased because they were good, energetic kind of things, such as registering of sexual predators and the misuse of fraud and fraud. Veterans were mentioned in there. As a veteran myself, I'm curious whether you can share some of the experiences you might have had during your terms.
Well, one of the a couple of the audits that we have done that have touched upon veteran services have been of the veterans, the so-called soldiers' homes that we have in Holyoke and in Chelsea.
Chelsea.
When we were at Chelsea a couple of years ago, we found that the agency, the Division of Veteran Services, was not really doing right by the residents. The hospital facility itself was all right, but there in terms of meeting sanitary code. But the residences there really had a lot of physical deficiencies, and there hadn't been a very rigorous effort to conduct inspections to see that it would be kept up to code. Some of the problems that we saw were not unknown either to the administration or to the legislature for that matter. But that audit did put it out for everyone to see, and I am pleased to say that this was frankly already in the works, but it did help speed along an appropriation, a capital project appropriation, and they are now going to begin first by replacing the hospital, but then rehabbing the residences as well. More recently, though, we were looking at veteran services in order to determine how completely the department was identifying veterans who might be eligible for services. The state does a good job when someone leaves service, when they come home, of welcoming them with the bonus and making them aware of various programs for which they may qualify. But for veterans who move in from out of state, or veterans whose circumstances might change after they've come home for any number of reasons, a lot of them were being lost track of, and we felt that the state, using pretty simple methods and particularly data that was collected by other agencies about who in the Commonwealth has veteran status, they could do a better job of identifying them so that local veteran service officers could do outreach to them. So that was the more recent veteran services audit.
Thank you. One little follow-up is how many employees are under your jurisdiction?
So there are approximately 220 people who work for me, and half of them conduct audits, and then the rest are doing a variety of tasks, the local mandates, Bureau of Special Investigations, and then just normal, IT and other back office functions. Including a young woman who's seated in the audience this evening. Lauren DiFilippo is with the communications team, and she would be very disappointed in me if I didn't point out that you have the opportunity to sign up for our monthly newsletter. Monthly newsletter. If you so choose, you can put your name down on that list there. Lauren is also a local girl. She now lives in Bridgewater. She's been in Brockton and East Bridgewater before that, too. Or was it West Bridgewater?
Brockton.
Okay.
Right down the road.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
have a quick question.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us and speaking about the Office of the State Auditor. You mentioned how if it was formed today, it would have a different name. What do you see on the horizon, speaking to a little bit how your responsibilities and the office's responsibilities have changed? Any challenges that might be coming up that are growing, and especially if any of them relate to us here in the local municipality level as well?
Well, I think that the greatest challenge for the office itself is letting people know that we exist, so that we can hire the talented staff that we need to do the work of the office. Because increasingly, although we still do make use of a lot of numbers, certainly. It's not just financial data. It's it's transactional data. It's how many inspections have been done, how many licenses have been issued, how many clients have been served, and we now, because of investments that we've made in technology, have a capacity to handle so-called big data, to bring the information that's collected by multiple state agencies in our office to give us a better idea of what's going on with a given population, and I'm thinking particularly of children. There are many child-serving organizations in the Commonwealth, from the Department of Developmental Services to early education and care to elementary and secondary education to the Mass Health Program, on and on. And frequently we are seeing that we can help agencies better do their job by identifying data that other agencies may keep that could be relevant to them. And so many of our more recent audits have been doing just that. Selectman King, you mentioned the Sex Offender Registry Board. That's where we pointed out to the Sex Offender Registry Board that they should be using information to keep track of the registered sex offenders who are not voluntarily providing the information every time they move or may change jobs. But if you go to the Registry of Motor Vehicles and you go to the Department of Revenue, etc., you'll be able to do a better job of tracking some of these individuals. So the office is requiring some new kinds of skills, and I think that, like a lot of state agencies, we are not the sector of enterprise that first comes to mind for a lot of technology and data-driven people. They're thinking that their careers really need to be in some startup. We try to offer an environment where they can have a job with a great deal of meaning because of the public impact, even if we can't provide kegs of beer on Fridays and pool tables and the like.
Understood. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
One of the other things that we're doing more and more, actually, because the legislature has really caught on, that I'm pretty bullish on local mandates, and I'm not going to shy away from them, and then really apply the pressure of my bully pulpit to get the legislature to fund some of these things, is the other thing that office can do is conduct municipal impact studies. And so in areas, so there have been a couple of areas now where there are mandates that don't meet the legal definition of mandate that requires state funding. But we are spending some time to uncover some of those areas and quantify for the legislature costs that are currently burdening municipalities. So water and sewer infrastructure was the topic of one of those reports. Another one of less pertinence here in this part of the state, but in more rural parts of the state, are the troubles for regional school districts, because unlike here, in many of those areas, the school-age population is shrinking, which doesn't mean that you can simply close schools and lay off teachers. It means you have to struggle that much harder to find the means to educate those children because they are not benefiting from the local aid formula, the formula aid, because their numbers aren't going up, and for other reasons, and the cost of transportation of those kids is really going through the roof, and it's a completely uncontrollable cost. So we've done a report on that, and we're working with the regional school caucus in the legislature to try to just expand their understanding of the gravity of the problem. And I think that, so we talk a lot with the Mass Municipal Association, and can partner with them on some things.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure to have this opportunity.
Thank you. You're a
Thank
good
you.
person to know. I'm glad we learned more about what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
So next, we have the transfer of common victualler license from Three Little MS Inc. to St. Mary and St. Caris of Easton Incorporated, doing business as the Pizza Depot. So if you want to come forward. You want to tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, we just gonna like taken over and everything gonna be like the same sub and a pizza and a salad. Like we try to work hard and we try to do good business in Easton.
Very good. Have you done business in Easton before?
Oh, the first time in Easton, but we have one in Wareham and one in Carver.
Oh, great. Very good. Does anyone have any questions about the application?
I'll just note, all the appropriate departments have reviewed and signed off and approve of the transfer.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the transfer of common victualler license as noted in the request?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Unanimous. Congratulations.
All right,
and
thank
good luck
you very
with your new
much.
business.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to invite Liz Bornstein from the Human Rights Committee up to talk about discussion and a possible vote on a joint letter with the School Committee and Human Rights Committee. So if you want to give us a little background and introduce yourself, Liz.
Sure. My name is Liz Bornstein. I live at 31 Walden Drive, and I'm the chair of the Human Rights Committee in Easton. So in regards to the incidents that happened in the schools about 10 days ago, the Human Rights Committee, in conversation with the superintendent, the school committee, the chief of police, board of selectmen, and the town administrator, would like a joint statement from all 6 of these elected and appointed groups uniformly condemning the actions of hate and bias that were behind these incidents. We feel that it's an appropriate thing to do for 2 purposes. One is that the communications about the incidents only formally went to parents of children in the schools. So the statement that went out on Friday after the second one was reported went to all, I think, K to 12, maybe pre-K to 12 parents, but nothing officially has gone out to the community from the community, even though it's been reported on the news and posted in people's personal capacities. The other reason we think the letter is important is that it sends a unified statement that there are all of these different entities and policy people in town who are saying the same thing, which is that these types of actions don't have a place in Easton and don't reflect the values in Easton. So though the content of the letter isn't necessarily going to share new information that hasn't already been put out there, for the record, it will be there to illustrate the importance of all of us speaking with the same message.
And it's worth noting that the letter, it was some work to get all the parties involved to wordsmith the way that they wanted. So the letter that's in our packet and is online has been modified a little bit. Nothing substantive changed, but it has a little bit different wording. So we all have a copy of that in our packet. So does anybody have any questions or comments?
I just want to voice support for this. I think it is very important for all of us to present that unified voice. I appreciate greatly the role that the Human Rights Committee has played in bringing this to the greater town population. I think you're spot on. I wish that there was a line that I could sign to also show the support. Dottie's signature will certainly do that, but I think it's so important not to be silent at this point in time. I think that there are a lot of examples in the world, certainly in a greater perspective, and certainly here in Easton, that it's so important we speak up and let people know where we stand, and we certainly stand firmly against these acts. And if in doing so that helps just one more person not experience the negative effects of this, or it helps one more person think twice about doing these acts to begin with, then I think that's well worth this effort, and I just think we have an obligation to do it, and thank you for making this possible for us.
I think the Human Rights Committee has a diverse and very dynamic group of people. I've been pleased to be the representative from the Board of Selectmen on it, and I'm very impressed with the work that's been done. I think if all of you saw the Be the Light at the festival last weekend. That was put on by the committee, and particularly one member, Amy Gershman, who did a heck of a job. And it was well received, and it was exciting, and people were really very enthusiastic about what we do. And I would like to echo what Tom said. This is critical for us to make a statement to the community about where we stand on these kinds of issues, and that Easton is now a much more diverse community, and I think it's important to celebrate that diversity and to be supportive of folks when they come to town. So thank you, Liz, very much.
And members of the school committee and the superintendent came to the last human rights meeting, and they spoke a little bit. The superintendent did send out a very detailed plan to the parents, and I think it might have been in the Easton Journal also. And I think that that's, the schools are doing what they need to do, but this is not just a school problem, it's a community challenge, not just in Easton, but in other places. And I think if there's a good takeaway from something like this, it's that it hopefully will encourage dialogue amongst people in the community to talk about it and talk about what they think and what they can do to try to make change in the community. Something as simple as modeling the kind of behavior that we want our families and our friends to see. So hopefully everybody thinks about it and looks at it in a positive light rather than, specifically a punitive type of way. And I really thank the Human Rights Committee for championing this and, doing what you can to try to make a difference in Easton. So we're going to need to take a vote for me to sign this. So if somebody would like to make a motion for me to sign.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Liz.
much.
Appreciate it.
And Michael, take that back if you want to sign it. Of course. All right, next up, we have a Planning and Zoning Board resignation. Let me try to find that in here. From David Clemens. And so that opens up a seat for the Planning and Zoning to fill that seat. So David Clemens had been on for probably a little bit more than a year or two, and just want to say thank you very much for the work that he contributed. There's a lot of work on that board, as there are on a lot of them, so the Planning and Zoning, we'll miss him, and thank you for his service. So we need to take a roll call vote to accept his resignation. So somebody make a motion, second, and then the roll call.
So moved.
Second.
King, Clemens?
Broussard, Clemens.
Barger, Clemens?
Full Janetti, Clemens.
Mills, Clemens.
Great. Thank you very much. The next one is a vote to authorize secondary payroll report signatories.
So this is a housekeeping item. Under Mass General Law, department heads are authorized to sign the weekly payroll, which they currently do. However, in their absence, the Board of Selectmen must approve a designee. In your packet is a list of proposed designees as recommended by department heads. I'd recommend approval of the proposed list, and Collector Treasurer Linda Hawks is here if you had any questions.
So this is like signing off on people's hours and...
Correct, yep.
Right,
and so the Board of Selectmen need not approve department heads doing that, but when department heads are on vacation, a leave of absence, this simply approves their designee, oftentimes an assistant department head or staff member in that office.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. So we need to vote to authorize the secondary payroll report signatories. Could I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Craig and then Tom. All in favor? Unanimous. Great, thank you. And next up is contract award, MHQ, for the purchase of 3 new police vehicles.
So in your packet, you'll find a memo and a contract submitted by Chief of Police Gary Sullivan. The contract award is with MHQ, as you mentioned, for 3 police vehicles, which is part of the annual police vehicle replacement. 2 2019 Dodge Chargers PPV, which I had to look up, it's police pursuit vehicles, and 1 Ford F-150 pickup truck. The contract is the amount of $101,100.30. Special town meeting this fall appropriated $138,095, and I would recommend the board vote to award this contract.
Quick, the Ford, what's the Ford's I know what the pursuit vehicles are, but what's the?
So it's another police vehicle. It provides some different terrain capabilities, and they also have trailers that they use the truck to pull.
Oh, okay, all right.
And Michael, can I assume that as usual in these cases, that the old ones are put up for auction, I guess, afterward?
Correct. So they're ultimately repurposed. Ultimately, there is a vehicle that is put up for auction. Sometimes some of these vehicles may bump down to replace another vehicle which is put up for auction or properly disposed of, yes.
Are you saying you want to buy a police cruiser?
Well, they've been through a beating, I would imagine.
Okay, nobody has any more questions, if somebody would like to make a motion to award the contract to MHQ to purchase 3 new police vehicles not to exceed $102,000.
So moved?
Second?
So that was Tom and Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Great. And next, the contract award for Woodard and Curran Engineering and Consulting Services for 5 Corners.
So again, in your packet, you'll find a memo and contract submitted by Dave Field, our Director of Public Works, in the amount of $400,000 with Woodard and Curran for engineering and consulting services related to the 5 Corners water main replacement project. Again, this was appropriated at special town meeting as part of the overall project appropriation of $2.4 million. So this is a portion of that funding, and I would recommend the board vote to award this contract.
Any questions on
Now,
that?
the construction is going to be done at the same time as the sewer, or is it totally separate?
No, that is at the same time. This project, in order to find some efficiencies and some convenience, was actually moved up in the priority list and funded now, so that could be done at the same time.
Same time.
Exactly.
Any other questions? So if somebody would like to make a motion to award this contract to Woodard and Curran for engineering and consulting services for 5 Corners water main replacement proposal in the amount of $400,000.
So moved.
Second?
Craig and then Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Excellent. So next up, we don't have any minutes for tonight. Public participation. Town administrator notes.
Sure. So I have some acting town administrator notes. First, I just wanted to thank the Department of Health and Human Services for 3 recent events that they held, and here's Kristen. One event they're hosting later this week. They held a Veterans Benefits Information Session, which was hosted by our Veterans Agent and Outreach Coordinator a couple weeks ago at Queesit House, which had a very good turnout. Just this past Friday, they held the AARP Age-Friendly Communities Kickoff event. The board may recall we submitted an application early this year, and we're very happy to report that we were accepted into that program. So this was a presentation of the certificate and kind of kicking off the next 5 years of planning. And following that event was a Veterans Appreciation Day held at Frothingham Hall, which involved games, entertainment, and lunch to celebrate our veterans. And then this Friday will actually be the first kind of working session, introduction and discussion for that AARP initiative, which will be this Thursday, the 13th, from 9 to 10 at Frothingham Hall. And then lastly, I just wanted to give a plug and mention that the Easton Police Department is hosting a Stuff a Cruiser event. It's going to be at Target this Saturday, which is the 15th. It's going to run from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And they are accepting new unwrapped gifts, toys, books, puzzles, etc. And all of the collections will be donated to My Brother's Keeper. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? So I'll just mention that while we were doing a lot with Health and Human Services this week, we're also doing a lot with municipal vulnerability preparedness for climate change. So Easton had received a grant recently. The state is asking all the communities to do, it's basically a risk assessment for your community to see how climate change will impact you. And as part of this award, a consulting group came in. There was a 2-day workshop, and Craig attended both days. I attended 1.5. And it was great. A lot of people from the community with a lot of different perspectives talking about everything from emergency evacuation of how do you move livestock to how are we looking at our waterways, how can we conserve. And so we'll use that information. There'll be another public listening session in the evening, because these 2 were during the day. And then we're going to put all that information together to make an action plan. So one of the reasons that it's important is, you know, obviously it's important to have that kind of a risk management plan, but the credit rating agencies, the bond rating agencies look at the towns that are not looking at this risk, and it could impact our credit rating. So I'm very happy that Easton is very out in front of this, and that allows us to take advantage of this grant. Once we get the data put together, we're eligible for other grants to help put together the report and get some of the action implemented. So
Awesome.
thank you, and a shout out to the planning department for their hard work on that.
It was a very interesting process. We had 2 different groups, and at the end, we came up with priorities, 3 priorities for each group. And in those priorities, both groups had 2 top priorities the same, and then each of us had 1 different. But I was fascinated that 2 separate groups came up with the same priorities for the town, which I thought was terrific. Good group of people, and I appreciated the folks from the consultants were very good as well.
Right. All right, well, I think that's it. So I would like to have somebody make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Unanimous. Great, thank you, everyone.